How's it going, everybody? I am Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day, and welcome to today's Pokemon Go video. Alright, this is actually extremely concerning. Recently, it was discovered that Niantic is planning to change up how remote raids work. Specifically, they're planning to limit how many of them you can do per day. I'm going to be talking about why I think this is a terrible idea, and what kind of implications it could have on the Pokemon Go community. Right, so with that said, let's roll the intro and get right into it. Probably the most game-defining and most popular feature Niantic released in the past couple of years has got to be remote raiding. This feature was originally released as a result of the COVID pandemic preventing players from being able to play outdoors. However, it has become a staple to Pokemon Go's raiding scene ever since it was introduced. Niantic had stated several times over the past year that they wanted to phase out remote raiding, as it didn't align with their philosophy around Pokemon Go's gameplay. This, of course, drew a lot of backlash from the Pokemon Go community, as the convenience and accessibility that remote raiding has brought to the game was highly valued. Well, instead of phasing them out completely, it looks like Niantic is about to make a change that will vastly limit them instead. Recently on the Silph Road Reddit, it was reported that some game text was added that indicates how many remote raids you can do per day. Yeah, this is a terrible design decision. If you want any evidence that Niantic is completely out of touch with their own player base, then look no further than this. I think Niantic needs to recognize that remote raiding has become an integral part of the Pokemon Go experience. It not only opens up raiding to so many players who were unable to raid before, but it is probably one of the best quality of life changes that Niantic had implemented over the past few years. For players who live in rural or inactive areas, this is a no-brainer. Remote raids have opened up the game to so many people who would have otherwise never have been able to participate. For others who do live in highly populated areas, remote raids was a great way for them to get some of their friends who don't live in the area to be able to play with them. If you are stuck in an immobile position, and you still want to participate in a raid hour or special raid day, congratulations, you have yourself a way to do that. Overall, the introduction of remote raiding was a much needed breath of life that the raiding scene had needed in such a long while. They need to understand that changing it or limiting it in any way is not going to produce the results that they are likely looking for. If the reason for them wanting to limit remote raids is to promote more outdoor play or community-based play, what they should do is instead encourage players to choose in-person raiding over remote raiding. By adding more incentives and rewards to in-person raiding, they can achieve what they want to achieve without taking away something that players really want to remain unchanged. I mean, this is something they've already been doing. When they added Rare Candy XL to the reward pools for in-person raids, I saw a huge uptick of in-person raiders in my local communities. People who are completely isolated start to come out of the woodwork, especially for Wednesday raid hours. Even if the raid boss was irrelevant, they were still willing to come out and participate in in-person raids simply because they needed the Rare Candy XL for other Pokemon in their collection. See, this is the direction that Niantic should be going if they are so gung-ho on wanting outdoor and community-based play. The results are proven in that regard. Look, if Niantic were to set a hard limit to remote raids that the average player wasn't going to hit anyway, then that's fine. I can understand that they probably want all of the whales who exclusively remote raid to step outside once in a while. However, if they were to give it a hard limit, like let's say only 5 remote raids allowed per day, then that is just going to hurt the entire player base. I really think what Niantic needs to ultimately do is reevaluate their core philosophies of their game and try to align it more with how players want to play their game. Constantly being at odds with their own players like this is not doing anyone any favors, and it can end up drastically cutting into their bottom line. I imagine if they were to add a hard limit to remote raiding, it is going to most certainly affect their revenue. It is not hyperbolic to suggest that Niantic probably made most of their money in the past couple of years as a result of remote raiding. It seems counterintuitive that they would do this in order to drive more sales. I mean, there are other factors that Niantic needs to consider if they're planning to make a change like this. If they were to add a hard cap on how many remote raids you can do, then they should also expect to see an uptick on spoofers. If spoofing is something they are still against, then this sort of change is going to work against that. I'm not a spoofer myself, but I can see if a player wants to raid hardcore, that they would consider spoofing as an option so that they can continue raiding beyond the limits that Niantic sets. Honestly, at the end of the day, this particular change is not going to outright destroy Pokemon Go. Will it be a nuisance to hardcore raiders? Absolutely. Is it going to be a net positive for Pokemon Go? Absolutely not. but ultimately, the community will continue on if their passion for the game hasn't run dry. Maybe, just maybe, this whole thing will blow over. If Niantic does implement this limit to remote raids, I do think the community will eventually move on. It will suck, like a lot, but if there is one thing this community is known for, it is their capability to adjust to Niantic's BS. I'm not saying this is a good thing, mind you. We as players shouldn't be put into a situation where we need to change how we play in order to fit the mold that developers want to cram us into. In fact, the opposite should be the reality. I think for the longest time, players of this beloved game had to deal with disappointment after disappointment from the developers. I really thought this year would be different, but it looks like things are as they typically are. If this limit mechanic to remote raids ever goes through, it's definitely going to set this game back several years. It goes without question that I am not a fan of this upcoming change. I really think it could do a lot of harm to Pokemon Go and undo a lot of progress that the game has made in a while. Rating has seen so many ups and downs over the years, but is currently in a really good place, and I don't want to see that change. As an ex-game developer myself, the rule of thumb should always be don't fix what isn't broken, and it really seems like that is exactly what Niantic is doing here. Or maybe their definition of broken is completely off. I guess the best case scenario in this regard is that Niantic has their ears to the ground and are gauging how the community is responding to this. That way, they change their minds on this abhorrent design change, because I promise you, it will do no good for the game in the long run if they ignore the community. I'm still holding out some hope that Niantic still has their priorities on their players, because it would really suck if they ruined a lot of the positive momentum they built up over the past few months with something like this. I mean, let's be real here, this is definitely the worst week for Pokemon Go so far this year. On top of this particular discovery, we also had major technical issues during Pokemon Go's first major in-person event of the year. If Niantic doesn't bounce back from this, it could spell disaster for this game. I'm really hoping they decide not to do this, and they just do whatever they can to generate positivity for this game. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Leave your thoughts down below regarding this upcoming change down below. Are you unhappy with the direction Niantic is going? What would you do instead of this change? Let me know in the comments, and let's have a great discussion. And if you ended up enjoying this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in any way, big or small, then be sure to check out the links in the description below. For all my patrons, they get a permanent spot on my in-game friends list. So if you want to interact with me in some way, like with remote raids, then do consider becoming a patron on my Patreon. But yeah, that's going to be it. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.